Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. That's how we get the word out. Thank you for doing that, family. I really appreciate it. Our guest today, Kelly Price, and I met in which country? Brazil, I guess, on a
Brazil.
John Maxwell
Yep.
trip. And now we're finally getting together, and I'm excited for this. This lady's incredible. Ran a business for 20 years. Sold the business, went into mission work with John, coaching, leadership, and then just recently started Reset Medical and Wellness Center, like just in April. And we're doing this, recording here just a little bit after this. So really cool, just a transition. So thanks for being on the show, Kelly.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, let's get into, we talked a little bit before, so let's just get into things. At 13, you left home and went out kind of on your own. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's not the usual.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say that I initially ran away and then over time ended up moving out on my own. I did drop out of high school after my freshman year of high school. I was a very young freshman, started school very early when I was 4. So it kind of made me a younger freshman to begin with. But after I dropped out, just started working and living on my own. I wouldn't say that it was a very honorable life. I definitely ran the ranks of, what I would not recommend people do, but it was good lessons for me to learn. I then took my GED when I turned 16, got into being a hairdresser early on. Then I started selling real estate at 18, and owned my own business, bought a home. Really just started doing a lot of things entrepreneurially, I guess I would say, because real estate certainly is a job of entrepreneurship. And then I also just realized that, I wanted to do something different. I moved from Michigan where I grew up in Arizona, but I had moved to Michigan when I was 18. I met my first husband at that point, and we ended up in Ohio. I shouldn't say back in Ohio because I had never lived here, but my stepmom that raised me basically and is still known as my mom today. I love her very dearly. She lived in Ohio and had asked us to come live here. That's a whole nother story in itself. But when we moved here, I had decided that I wasn't going to go back into real estate, because to build up a clientele here. And I started waitressing while my husband went back to school. And I had sold a couple of guys a bottle of wine that during a lunch hour because we were having a contest and I knew nothing about wine. And they said, you just sold us a bottle of wine that we don't even want. You really should be in car sales. And I'm like, oh no, I need to really make, certain money. My husband's in school. And they're like, we promise you'd make more, than that. And so I actually went out and tried to find a job in car sales. My dad was in RV sales all my life, so I had been kind of around the industry, and I found a job at a dealership group that offered a tremendous great training. I got involved with them. Very shortly into it, I realized that there were some steps in the process of from sales into the finance office that were really kind of missing in their training program. And I asked if I could start to write a training program for them. I got moved into the finance office, started writing a training program for them, then started training all of the dealerships. They had 9 different stores, started doing dealership training for all of the stores, became their corporate finance trainer in charge of all training in the dealership. And just really, I had a very entrepreneurial owner that allowed me to really just like if I had an idea, I could take it to them and then they would let me do it. And I just kind of kept going and growing in that dealership group. And about 6 years into my tenure there, I realized that there were some holes broken with a vendor that they had. And I said, I really think that we could do this better, and save you some money. And so I started to do some administration for him. I hired a programmer to track the contracts, wrote the contracts myself. It was a lot easier back then. Now it's all regulated. You couldn't have done this back then, but or today, I guess I should say. And so I started doing a lot of that in 1996, started that programming. And then I said, I think I could do this for other dealers as well. The dealer was willing to let me go do that. And so I started working with other outside dealers, in working with them to save them money and do that. And what I had learned very quickly is that not a lot of people in our industry are very honest with the dealer's money related to how they handle and process everything. And so I set out on a mission to be able to let people know that when they, pay you to handle a job for them, that you're processing 100% of the claims the right way, and that the money is all transferred properly, and there isn't any me scraping something off the top and you not being able to figure out what did you pay me and what did you not. And, really set out and change the industry quite a bit related to the transparency between a dealer and an administrator. And so I spent about almost 20 more years working in that field. So I, from 2006 to 2020, built that business up to where I had 185 employees, worked with about 3,000 dealers across the United States. We're honored for our culture, for the way we treated customers and vendors and people, as well as our employees. Had a very, very great, a great team. I was really proud of what we had built. And in 2020, we had the industry changed quite a bit. The regulations had really gotten pretty tough. And you either need to be like a super big company or a super small company. The cost of doing business, I mean, we were getting less per contract that we administered, but our costs were probably more than double what I had started with. So kind of the margins started to shrink. And so everybody was kind of being bought up, and very similar to what had happened in a lot of different industries, but it's very hard for, we'll call it the mom and pop type businesses, to survive in an insurance world that's highly regulated now, where it wasn't regulated back when I started. And so we looked to merge with another company that we could go to that wasn't going to pull us apart and start to disseminate everything, because a lot of people would just want to buy you and like pick you to pieces, with the hope that we could bring something bigger and better. So in 2020, right during the smack of COVID, we had already agreed at the end of 2019 to sell, and we were supposed to close the middle of March of 2020. We all know what happened in the middle of March. There was a big crash that happened, and all the banks stopped all the financing. And we kind of fought through that and ended up still closing at the end of June. Shortly thereafter, there were obviously two CEOs, me and the other person, and their company being larger. It was clear that there wasn't room for both of us necessarily as CEOs, and I had a lot of desire to go out and do some bigger work related to mission-oriented type stuff. So I actually became a John Maxwell speaker, trainer, and coach in 2020 with the intention of doing executive coaching. I did do some executive coaching for about a year one-on-one, and I realized that my impact, I felt, was too small to do one-on-one coaching on a day-to-day basis. So I really got into Live to Lead and into some of the mission work that John is doing around Change Your World and transformation tables, and bringing hope and values and actions to people around the world, and started traveling quite a bit to do some of that work with John and his team. And that's where I got the opportunity to meet you. But also going as a coach. So I'm I'm on both sides of the fence with John's team, because I'm not only on the equip side, which is the nonprofit side of being a donor, but I'm also on the coach side, where I can go out and act as a coach. So it's pretty cool. I get to kind of see both sides of it. But the impact that he was making was just tremendous. So I really kind of dug my heels in and learned a lot about that. And I remember sitting on a trip to Papua New Guinea with John, and I had gone up and sat on next to him on the plane, and I said, I said, how do you keep going? Like, you have obviously all the money that you need. What keeps you motivated? Because for me, I was really challenged with, I had, enough money to live on from the sale of the company. I had spent 25 years not taking care of myself, and I had really gotten myself in a position. I've lost over 100 pounds. I've really like started to dive into, taking care of myself and eating healthy. And, I'm sure I'm not going to make up for the 25 years that I slept 3 to 4 hours a night and ran the company and didn't care for my own self very well. But at least I can be healthy today. But I said to him, I said, how do you, what keeps you going? And I said, I'm not going to work anymore. And he's like, well, first of all, Kelly, you have a lot more to give. You don't give up on working. But he said, give it 2 years of being off and then tell me, then I think you're going to want to do something. And I said, no, I'm not going to work again. I'm not going to work again. Literally almost 2 years to the day of me leaving the company and just sitting at the board level instead of being in the day to day. I was sitting in where were we? We were in Patagonia with I was with my two sons, and I said to them, I really think I'm ready to use my brain again. And I literally think it might have been almost 2 years to the day that I was sitting, or a year from the day that I was sitting on the plane with John when he had told me it would be 2 years. And he said, and I said, I just feel like I'm ready to use my brain again. And I kind of put it out there into the universe and said, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? And I said, God, lead me, give me some direction. And I sent out a couple of texts to some industry people saying, hey, I'm ready to use my brain again. And, immediately people are like, oh, yeah, I'd love to have you. And then I was like, my coach, Chad Willardson, says to me, he said, if it's not scary and exciting, it's not for you. And I thought, why am I getting back into something that, yeah, I know it. I mean, I spent 30 years in the automotive industry and I can, talk it and do a good, I'm on a couple of boards and I have a lot to give, but it probably isn't as exciting and scary as it needs to be. So Chad says, if it's not exciting and scary, it's not good enough to get you out of bed. And so I came across, I had been involved in a couple of documentaries, one on the blindness, and it's still going on today. We're working on it, but it is about lowering the unemployment of the blind from 70 to 7%. It's called Surpassing Sight. And I had been involved in another documentary called, which you probably have heard of, Sound of Freedom, which was the awareness of childhood trafficking. And as I was talking with my friend Lucas, that was involved in that I was involved with him on both of those, he was telling me about a doctor that he was following that was helping with PTSD, depression, anxiety. And as soon as he told me about it, I was like, oh my gosh, my son needs that, because he's a fireman and he's got a lot of PTSD from all of that. And literally, I heard about this. I got him on the phone with the doctor. I got so intrigued by it, but we were leaving for Antarctica and Patagonia at the time that I had learned about it. And by the time we got back and I took my son for treatment, I actually took my son and my son-in-law, and I knew right away that even before they got the treatment, that I was destined to open up a center in Cleveland because it helps so many people. And, my mission, I have a nonprofit foundation called Changing Lives Foundation, which helps people in catastrophic needs. So house fires, sudden illness, accident, injury, with a financial grant to help them to the other side. And that's great, but it's like a one-time grant. But this is like changing lives, like truly changing lives. I mean, it literally transforms some of these people that suffer with trauma and PTSD and anxiety and depression. And it doesn't have to be, it started with Delta Force and the Navy SEALs, but now it's like everybody. Like there's so much trauma and mental health issues in the world. And so when I walked in and I said to the doctor, I'm very thankful for you to treat my son, but what I want to do is open up a center in Cleveland. And he's like, huh? Like I hadn't even, obviously my kids hadn't even had the treatment yet, but I just knew that this is what God had called me to do. And so for me, it has nothing to do with the money. In fact, I will donate 100% of my proceeds back to helping more people, but it is more about like how many people we can help. And so when I learned of a very, very innovative treatment using a stellate ganglion block that's been used for 100 years, it's not like it's new medicine. It's just a new way to use it that is really helping people. I just knew that I had to open it. So January 8th, I set out a business plan and wrote it all out. And you cannot own a medical center, just so you know, without being a doctor. So I'm not a doctor. Never been a doctor. I had to go find a doctor that didn't know me and that was willing to partner with me to open up a center to help people in need. And I just started asking around and calling people, and I called University Hospital's chair of pain management, and they led me to a gentleman, Dr. Joshua Goldner, that was willing to become my chief medical officer without even knowing me. We literally, I met him and I was leaving for Mexico for 5 weeks, and I was hosting different retreats that I had already planned. And I said, I want to open this center April 1st. So we sat on Zoom calls from Mexico, never even having met each other, and hired our team and did our logo and got everything going. And on March 9th was the first time we met in person as a team and met each other. It was very odd because you're like in a business partnership with somebody you had never even met. But they were just had the hearts to serve and had the hearts to really do this. And so March 9th, we were opening April 4th, and we still did not have a practicing doctor. I had a doctor that was the owner and the chief medical officer, but he works for the VA. So he wasn't leaving that position. He's doing great work for veterans. And so we were a week and a half away from opening and still didn't have a doctor confirmed. And so God gave us a doctor, and we have an amazing doctor now. And we opened the center April 4th and treated some of our first patients. He only became full-time May 1st. So we are having our grand opening on Monday. So
Awesome.
it was a crazy 90-day ride, because literally in less than 90 days, we went from not having a doctor, not even knowing anything, to opening a building and having a sign up. So it was pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, that was a lot. So for any of you listeners, if you're like, oh, that was a lot, kind of lost in there a little bit, we're going to back up and go through some of
Okay.
it. So, one of the things I got out of it was, as a young person, you're serving in a waitressing, and from there, an opportunity was presented to you and you decided to take it. And then when you took it, you also showed initiative in the opportunity to not just be an employee, but to start to change the business. And a lot of people don't do that because they're like, well, unless I'm getting paid, I'm not doing anything
Yeah.
to help anything. So first of all, where do you think, because actually just talking to a friend this morning about this, where do you think that mindset of like, I feel like you just went through this stuff like really fast, but where did the mindset come from that you could do it? And like, where did this self-belief come from? Because a lot of people suffer with lack of self-belief. And, where did yours come from? And how could someone help develop it in themselves? And then just the idea that you were willing to take a chance and willing to do the things, even this last one, starting the medical center, all the things, a lot of people don't even do the first step. So you're willing to do the first step. Where did that come from? And how can people, you think, develop? So self-belief and taking action even when it's scary.
Yeah. So knowing where it came from originally, I am not positive. I do know that, I grew up in a house of addiction, chaos. My dad was married 4 times by the time I was 16, so a lot of craziness. Thank goodness for my middle mom that kind of was there from like my formative years of giving me some, some good solid ground. My dad's my best friend today. I mean, but it was a lot of addiction and chaos and, different things. And so I think initially it was, I'm not going to be him. Like that was, I don't want to live in addiction, even though I probably lived in addiction related to food. I did not live in like the addiction of drugs and alcohol. Even though I used a lot of drugs and alcohol before I was 18, but I remember standing on a hill and being pretty high at, 17 or 18 and looking out and thinking, I'm going to be my dad. And then I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be my dad. And so I think living on my own early, that was just me being a bad, stubborn teenager without a lot of guidance in my house. But from there, it was once I determined that I wasn't going to use drugs and alcohol, um, it became more about I'm not going to become who that person is. And I did spend 10 years in a 12-step program called OA, that gave me a lot of really good baseline for my life. And so learning those 12 steps, I think, gave me a lot of really good foundational work that I was able to use for many, many years related to all the different steps and things. So I'm really lucky. I don't carry a lot of burden with me. I don't carry a lot of shame, even though I have plenty to probably go around with. But I think working through the steps of the 12-step program really helped me. And then my closeness with God. And I mean, it really, if you look at the 12-step program, every single step is written inside the Bible anyway. So I feel like following a 12-step program, if you're not a believer, is a really good place to kind of get the same
Can I stop
wisdom.
you on that? When did you become a Christian, Kelly?
So I don't ever remember not believing in God.
Okay. You were raised up.
So I grew up with my mom, the mom that I will call the mom of my my
Right.
younger years, was Catholic. So we went to a Catholic church.
Hmm.
And I remember loving being there, but I remember being very scared of God because it was at the time, for me
Oh,
at least, and I'm sure from what I hear from a lot of people, it's changed quite a bit in the Catholic Church, but it was you'll go to hell if you'll go to hell, you're just
right.
be, that kind of stuff. And so I was like a little, it was a fearful. And then during my time in OA in the 12-step program, I learned to have a God of friendship and a God of, um, that I could have a relationship with, and that I mean I have to fear in a healthy way, but
Mhm.
not in a negative way. And so I want to please him. So it's not I
Mhm.
mean there is fear that I want to live to being the best person that I can.
Mhm.
So, but I would say probably I spent a good 20 years being chaotic in my business and not putting God first.
Mhm.
And the last 5.5 years have really been God first in the morning, no matter what. And so I've become a lot closer to God. So I don't know that there's a time that that was the case, but I don't ever remember being alone without
Well, and
God.
I want to touch on too. So if people are listening to this, sometimes we want to chase the shiny. Hey, we want that better life. We want that trip. We want that financial freedom, la da da. But sometimes we have to, and I'm way more this way, so I resonate with this. Sometimes we have to avoid the dark side. And so what Kelly's talking about here was like, who don't you want to be? And sometimes that can drive you more than who do you want to be. And I know that definitely drives me more is who I don't want to be, what I don't want in my life, rather than what I do want in my life. So like use that if that motivates you to do something, like who don't you want to become? Or who like what lifestyle don't you want instead of always just like, oh, the pretty, the shiny, because a lot of like manifestation and laws of attraction, all the stuff that's out there, that's what we talk about. Oh, think about all the good stuff. But a lot of times it's the quote bad stuff that actually drives most high achievers. So just be aware of that if you're just getting in the industry. Here's another one. We didn't want to be like our dad, and that's what drove us. So,
Yeah.
you know, and I think a lot of people just miss that titch because, like I said, a lot of like Instagram and Facebook is like law of attraction. focus on the trips, focus on the lifestyle, focus on the money, focus on whatever it is, as opposed to, hey, if you don't do this, how broke are you going to be? Do you want to live on the street? Do you want to like go to the dark side? And I know I work way harder when I even just hearing that as I say it, I'm fired up. So,
Mhm.
and a lot of higher achievers. So it's interesting that drove you and got you into that, the lifestyle that you chose because you didn't want the lifestyle that you grew up in.
Yeah, and I going back to even my conversation with John when we were sitting on the plane, and I feel very lucky that, I have the opportunity to just sit there and have a conversation with who I believe to be one of the greatest leadership trainers in the world, or coaches or writers, or however you want to look at it, probably all of the above
Mhm.
speakers. But for him to be able to kind of pour into me and say, you have more to do, Kelly. You know what I mean? Don't be afraid.
So yeah,
Don't be
let's
afraid.
fast forward to that, Kelly. Because I love that. That's so, we went through the business and we worked really, really hard, and we want to talk a little bit about that mindset of what even built you that business and why you worked so hard even for those 20 years. But then you sold it. For a lot of people, I know some people right now that are good. They've sold out of their business, or they really did do the hustle, and now they're like, I don't know if I want to do more. Like, I kind of just want to like sit back and chill. You know, but you felt that way too, and then it changed. And John said, you're made for something more. Um, Tell us like what transpired to make you start to realize, you are made for more, though you don't need it financially, which is what motivates a lot of people in the initial part of life to build a business and to become quote successful. Now you're chasing significance, and talk to someone that's maybe in that position of how that feels to actually be starting to do something different, significant with your life.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, and it all just actually probably came to a head where I realized what I had been doing. So when I first sold the company, and had decided that staying with the company on a day-to-day basis wasn't the right thing for me, that was like a year of going, a little over a year of going through that and helping with the merger and, things like that. But, um, I think for me initially, it was shame of not feeling like I really needed more money. So why would I go out and make more money? So I had committed to my executive coach at the time that I would never work again a full-time job, and that I would only volunteer or do things that were paid directly to the foundation or something like that. So I had a lot of, but I think I had a lot of feeling that I didn't deserve more, or really even probably deserve what I had been given. Even though I knew that I had worked my tail off. So it wasn't like I didn't earn it. I just didn't deserve it. And, um, but I don't know that I had acknowledged that. That was just kind of where I was.
Hmm.
And so I was working as busy doing things, either for the foundation, leadership training, coaching, traveling, with the transformation tables, I mean, I was doing a lot. So I wasn't like, and I haven't been ever, I don't think I could really be the person that just retires. I knew that. Like I knew I wasn't going to be that way, but the feeling of not feeling like I could go earn more money. And then I do a 10x executive mastermind where it's based on the book by Ben Hardy called 10x is easier than 2x. And so I had done a couple of 10x executive masterminds, which I always say they're really more self-fulfilling. They help keep me on track, because when I'm teaching it and coaching it, then I feel like I need to live it. And
Mhm.
so it talks about setting a big three each night before you go to bed, and what are the three most important things you do, and that if you really focus on doing that every single day and you get those three things done, you'll get 10 times more done than most people that walk into their day without really a set agenda of what they need to get done to move forward in their future self goals. So, I basically help people set their future self goals and then break it down by what are you going to do this 6 months? What are you going to do this month? What are you going to do this week? What are you going to do today? To get you to move. And so basically, like Chad Willardson, my current executive coach, says, they're called 12-week years, that you can do more in 12 weeks than most people do all year. So that basically his team has 4 years of work done in a year because they're so incredibly focused on making sure they're doing the right things rather than the wrong things. And so that's really what my 10X mastermind kind of teaches, which I had learned. And so really, like all of that processing, when I was learning that, and I was on a coaching call with Chad at the end of the year, and somebody in the group said, what if I don't need more money? Like, should I be earning more money or should I not be earning more money? And I was like, my ears perked up a little bit, and I was like, oh, I can't wait to hear the answer to this one. And Chad said, the biggest thing that people do is when they start to feel guilty that they have money, they stop you hinder yourself. Like when you feel like you're getting too much, you push yourself down. And he said, it's all about your heart. And what are you doing with the money that you earn? Earning money and being successful isn't bad. It's what you do with it that matters. So if your heart is in the right place, you can earn as much money as you want. And it literally broke me open. Like I was like, oh, I can go earn more money because I know that I do with what God has given me. I give back a ton. In fact, my accountant says, all right, enough. Like you don't have to give that much. But truly, I just believe that it's God's money. Like I really just think it's God's money. I don't, I should not be in control of it. And even though I live a very great life, I, try to give as much as I possibly can. But when he said that, I was like, oh, and it's really what John was telling me too. I just wasn't hearing it that way. You know what I mean? That it's okay. You know what I mean? You have more work to do. And the only reason he keeps working is to give more and to change more people's lives. And so, when you make money, you can do things like that. I am a person that can naturally or seem to naturally design or build businesses that make money that I can give more money away. And so it really gave me that freedom to do that. Now, I don't know, we're very early into reset in the medical center, so I hope to change a lot of lives and in the meantime make some money that I can give back to more people. But now not only am I making money, I'm seeing like life change. I literally sat in front of a couple yesterday, and after his treatment, he was just crying and saying, you might have given me my life back to where I can actually be a dad and a husband again. And I just thought, that's all that I need to hear, whether we make another dollar. I mean, that's just fantastic.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's always about the money for a lot of people. I don't know that that's always a thing, but I think when you've given up all this time, you feel like you've given up and now it's like your time. And just listening to you and how unselfish you are as far as like, you could just be like relaxing and traveling, which you do a lot of, which is great, but you're also working and hustling to help, more people and making a bigger difference. It's not just about you. And I think that that's awesome. So I know it could go forever, but in wrapping up, I always ask 3 final questions and then anything we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for our listeners. So first and final question is, if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you could say that could help them find it?
If you're looking for your purpose, I would say, if you could do anything and you weren't afraid to fail, what was it that you would do? And would it cause you to get up every morning scared and excited? So
Yeah.
just, because a lot of times we can't find our purpose, and a lot of people that even start my 10X class are like, I have no idea who I want to be in my future self. And I said, just put something down, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And let's start putting our feet one foot in front of another. And next thing you know, you're going to figure out like where it is you're supposed to be going. But sometimes we don't do anything. And when we're stuck and we don't do anything, then nothing's going to happen. And sometimes we just have to, I always say, I build it and they will come. And if you put one foot in front of another and trust in God, that eventually he will show you where you're going. You just have to start walking.
Awesome. Second and final question is, what's one of your favorite quotes and why?
I would say probably something that really invigorated me to get my butt in gear related to my health and wellness, and even just my whole day-to-day routine, was how you do anything is how you do everything.
Mm.
And so I have a big snoozing problem. And, when I conquer that and I don't snooze, the whole day is great. When I start my day bad and start my day, behind, or I always say it, with my hair on fire, then that's how my entire day goes. So I would just say how you do anything is how you do everything. And that's from, do you take the extra step of putting the dish in the sink, or going all the way to the dishwasher? Like, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Good. Third and final question. What's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
I already know that. It's a quote by Irma Bombeck that says, "At the end of my life, I want to know that all my talents and my skills have been used." It's something like that, but that I didn't give away anything that God gave me, that I used every bit of those talents and skills.
Hmm.
That's
I
not
love that.
exactly how it goes, but I have it on the car.
I get the gist.
Yeah.
Run out using everything. It's not about you.
Yeah.
And so you run into someone in the coffee shop and, they're just like, okay, we're going to do 3 things every day. That's going to help us, get on that path to 10X. Sometimes we do things we don't want, like I'm sure the car business, like a lot of times when you talk about like passion and purpose, people are like, I have to like it every day. I don't think the car thing was your passion, but you made it your purpose and it's built you a business that now you can really do your purpose. So I just want to
Mhm.
kind of point that out to some people. That sometimes you have to do some things that might not feel like your passion in order to build your passion. But what's
Absolutely.
something that we didn't touch on today that you think, would be really impactful to leave your listeners with?
Yeah, I would just say, if you do not have a solid morning and evening routine, that if you want to change your life, start with that. Because by having a really solid evening routine and a morning routine, you can really change your outlook, your attitude, your purpose. And most importantly, if you're not taking the time to write down things that you're grateful for, and really starting your day with gratitude, that's the biggest thing. I love, and I give away books for free. So if anybody wants books, my mission is to give away 50,000 books. If you go to my blog, and request a book, but I give away a ton of 5-minute journals. And it talks about how setting up your day by starting with gratitude and ending with gratitude. And guys, it doesn't take long. I mean, it's very simple, but it really changes your mindset, because even in your worst day, and I remember in COVID when everything was going disastrous, I would write down my gratitude list, and sometimes it was just like, I have food, because everything around me was so crazy, but I had food and maybe some other people didn't. So I had something to be grateful for. And I know a lot of people go through some really, really tough times, and you may feel like it's the end, but it really isn't. You're going to get through this and you're going to come out better, but we just sometimes have to focus on what we're grateful for. So I would say, if you don't have a morning and an evening routine, that would be the first place I would start.
Cool. Very good. Guys, we'll have all this stuff in her show notes, the blog, her website, whatever information I can get will be in the show notes. So definitely reach out to Kelly if you have any questions on anything she's doing or has done, because I know she's here to help, as you can probably tell. Let's go out there. Let's change the world one starfish or one person at a time. If we can change one life at a time together, we can change the world. Thanks for being on, Kelly.
Thank you. I appreciate you.